mention is the importance during the course of this day of Indriya Samvara, sense restraint. That's always a vital prerequisite for making progress in the meditation. So for this time, when we're together on this platform practicing meditation, try and, as far as possible, turn the attention inwards and try to avoid going outward through the gates of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body, seeking diversion, seeking distraction. Pay attention to the inner experience. There are, of course, many different ways to meditate, and many of you will have some established practice. Probably most of you have some particular way of practice that you're used to. And if that's the case, then feel free to continue that. What I thought I would offer this morning as a particular meditation instruction, which may be new to some of you, probably most of you, I'm guessing would probably have been exposed to it before, but I'm going to give you the basic instructions in the Mahasi Sayadaw method of Vipassana. First of all, we need to clarify what is meant by the word Vipassana. And this I found is often misunderstood. Vipassana is not a narrowly to be considered as a meditation or a meditation method. Vipassana is a state of mind or an attitude of mind. And the meditation methods, and there are more than one, there are several different ones, but the meditation methods are means to an end to access that state of mind. So that state of mind that we're trying to develop is Vipassana, which means clear seeing. We're trying to develop a state of mind that has a basis in equanimity, upekkha, and in sati, mindfulness. And the perfect state of mind is when every object which arises to consciousness, and consciousness is continually taking objects, as long as we're in existence, there will be objects presenting themselves to consciousness on a momentary basis. And if we're established in a state of Vipassana, then the objects are all clearly evident, but they do not disturb the mind. The tendency for the being in samsara, confronted with the stream of objects, is to react to them. We grasp and desire the pleasant objects, and we fear and turn away from the unpleasant objects, and we tend to ignore the neutral objects. And we're trying to train ourselves here to just be present for a moment with each object as it presents itself, without picking and choosing or discriminating, but to see every object with the same momentary attention. A good cardinal rule to remember is nothing is so important that it needs to be grasped or analyzed or uh, examined in for more than a moment to know its nature. So nothing is so important it needs to be treated specially and grasped. And also nothing is so trivial that it can be ignored or disregarded. Every object is to be attended with the same calm, clear, fully awake attention for a single moment and allow it to pass through. So that's a pretty brief summary of the attitude of Vipassana. The important point is to maintain that neutrality and clarity of mind, and to treat each object with the same penetrating attention for a single moment and just allow it to pass. Now I'll give the specific instructions for the Mahasi method, which again, I'll reiterate, this is only one possible method amongst several of doing Vipassana. It's the one I happen to be most familiar with and that I was initially trained in. And it's one of the few Burmese methods that have become popularized outside of Burma and established in foreign countries. So the sitting meditation and the sitting and walking, there's a little different instruction, but the same basic principle. Well, I'll start with the sitting. The sitting meditation, one first pays attention to the movement of the breath at the abdomen. And this is not a samadhi meditation, so we don't have a narrow focus. You pay attention to the whole broad area, the whole bowl of the belly as it rises and falls with the breath. And that physical movement, that the momentary change of the body at the abdomen. And you pay attention to that for anywhere from a few breaths to a few minutes until you feel settled and established and the mind is at ease. Then whenever you feel ready, you make a subtle shift in the mind and just allow whatever arises to be the object of attention. And that might be an internal object. Very often, this is what we're mostly dealing with, is internal objects like a memory or a daydream or a fear or a feeling happy, feeling sad, feeling bored, whatever it might be. Or it might be an external object like a sound or a sensation elsewhere in the body. Then you just take that, whatever it is, as the object for a single moment. And the particular technique of the Mahasi method, which is sometimes for this reason called the noting method, is that to make sure we've actually seen the object, we make a brief, very light, subliminal mental note classifying the object. So you might notice remembering or worrying or externally hearing, smelling, etc., or emotional states like feeling happy, feeling sad, feeling anxious. Yeah. Now, it's important to clarify a bit about this noting because sometimes I have found people take it wrongly or misunderstand it. It's really a very secondary part of the practice. It's like a trick you're playing on yourself to make sure you've actually seen the object. It's the seeing of the object that is the important part. The noting is just a way of developing that. And what it specifically develops is the specific noting of discrete objects. One of the things to avoid is just being in a fuzzy state of general awareness, and you're not discriminating between this and that. You're not being clear about this specific object, this sharp, clear specificity is a very important part of developing vipassana. It's not just a vague awareness, but it's an awareness of whatever this is at this moment as the object of consciousness. So that's very important. And that's what the noting facilitates or helps to develop. But remembering that it's secondary, don't get hung up with the noting. Don't ever waste any time trying to figure out what could be the correct label. Just make sure you've seen it, put a label on it, and move on. So there isn't any really right or wrong system of labeling the objects. But that said, some types of noting or labeling are more helpful than others. Definitely keep them very brief, one or at most 2 words. And try and use verbs rather than nouns, particularly with something like a sound. You know, you don't note a sound, or even worse is to note the source of the sound. Some people, they'll hear a bird singing and they'll notice bird. That's quite incorrect. What you're actually experiencing is not a bird, it's hearing. Then you might recognize it as a bird and perceive a bird, and that's perceiving. And you might imagine in your mind a picture of a bird that's imagining or visualizing. So we're trying to break things down as far as possible to a very momentary level, trying to break up complex processes into momentary occurrences. When you practice in this way, if at some time there's nothing clear to notice, then don't go looking or fishing around for something. Just return to the breath. And then when the mind starts to naturally get busy and produce objects, then leave the breath and pay attention to the objects. And as this carries on, if you get used to this practice, then there's a natural cycling in and out between periods spent peacefully on the breath and periods noticing many objects. If you carry on this meditation into the walking posture, the same principles apply, but instead of using the breath as your foundation, you use the sensation of walking on the soles of the feet. And if the mind gets busy while you're walking, it's best to stop walking and just stand still and continually note the objects until the mind is quieter, and then return to walking, and walk very slowly and pay attention to each step, with the focus on the physical sense of touch on the soles of the feet. So I think that's sufficient for introductory remarks on this practice. So we've got a few minutes left before 9:45, when I'll give another teaching. Well, I'll leave you to practice until then.